Hello, everyone. For the cultural exploration project, I decided to focus on the Sikh culture. So, the Sikh culture is an Eastern religion that came from the Punjab region of India, and it believes that people are one from God. We are all the same and bleed the same, despite physical differences. The Sikh culture also focuses on a sense of community and showing allegiance to God, because it is a religion after all, but also a culture, by physical means, like such as not cutting hair, not eating meat, etc. The reason why I chose the Sikh is because I have two main reasons. The first is my parents are friends with some people who practice Sikhism, and I've always been interested in Eastern religions because I grew up in the US, and I also wanted to see the differences and the commonalities between Eastern and Western religions. The other reason why I chose to do the Sikh culture is because many people tend to view Indian people or people of Indian descent as people who practice only Islam or Hinduism, but they tend to forget about Sikhism. So, besides doing like actual research online, I decided to go to a Gurudwara, which is like the place of worship for Sikh people. And I went to one specifically in Diamond Bar, California, because my parents are friends with one of the people there, and his name is Jaipal Singh. And he's one of the main leaders at the Gurudwara in Diamond Bar. The interview was slightly difficult due to language differences because English is not his first language, and English is technically my first language, and I don't really understand Punjabi. So, but it was okay because we managed to figure it out despite the language differences and the wording of the questions. Singh put a lot of emphasis on how people, regardless of their religion, physical appearance, ethnicity, whatever, all people together share the same blood. So he doesn't understand why people are racist and discriminatory towards one another's because we are all the same ultimately. And at the end of the interview, instead of like shaking my hand as one normally would, because I stuck my hand out and I thought that he would shake my hand, he hugged me and kissed like the side of my head, like right here because in Sikh culture, I didn't realize this, but whenever someone sees you as like a younger sibling, a family, or like a friend, or like a child, essentially, not in a negative way, but just as a like someone younger than you, they share a lot of affection with that because it's just a respectful thing to do. And the Sikhs come from North India originally, but many of them live in the United States, the United Kingdom, and also in India, but many other countries as well. And they are a religious minority in most of those countries. And a good majority of the Sikhs are Punjabi people, but many of them were forced to go away from India due to British colonialization, recruitment of the Sikhs in the Imperial Army, and landform reacts, but also plenty of other different reasons. And Singh, my parents' friend, told me that the religion was started by a man named Guru Nanak, who was born in 1469, and he was the first guru. And guru means a teacher or master. So instead of like a pastor, as like a Christian would say, they would think or more as a guru. And there are several family traditions in the Sikh culture and religion. So according to Michael Hawley in his book Sikh Diaspora, Theory, Agency, and Experience, men and families tend to have a higher ranking than women, and during the Punjabi Hindu annual fasting, even though Sikhism and Hinduism are completely different religions, they do share some commonalities. Some Sikh women during the annual fasting will partake in the fasting for their husband's well-being as a sign of respect and to show like the man is in charge, and then the women want to help the men in charge. And according to Eleanor N. Esbit in her book Sikhism, A Very Short Introduction, women's worth usually depends on if the fact that they have a husband or not, because women are not seen as higher ranking as men. So many Sikh parents do not want to give their daughters away because there's a stigma that they're if they give the daughter away, then they're deemed like weaker or inferior compared to other Sikh members. So they want to have more sons rather than daughters. Nesbitt also notes that there's a holiday called Raksha Bandhan, where the bond between brothers and sisters are celebrated, and the sisters usually tie a bracelet to their brother's like wrist just as a sign of respect. For community traditions, there are several as well. According to Holly, there's a thing called a langar, which is a public kitchen in Gordas where people of all backgrounds, so it doesn't matter if you're like a Sikh, Christian, Muslim, non-religious, non-Indian as well. So they can get a free vegetarian meal after its service and get to know one another in Pankat, which means that people sit around and line up together to eat, and then they don't really care like what caste you're a part of, what social standing you have. It doesn't really matter. Just it's all meant to make sure people have time to get to know one another and eat together as a community, regardless if you are familiar with them or not. And the langar is well kept by people who are doing seva, which means selfless service, and seva is a really important part of Sikh culture. Holly also talks about how during service there's kirtan, which is congregational singing, which is supposed to help people have clear minds and feel connected with one another in their religions. So it's not just like singing hymns like as Christians normally would. It goes a little more beyond that, but it's still generally the same gist. And Holly also makes note of how the Gordas have databases where people can look up potential spouses and their information to have an arranged marriage because even though Western culture doesn't really value arranged marriages as much as Eastern cultures do, they find it easier to just do arranged marriages because they get to know the people personally and let them meet. But that does not mean that they're forced to marry one another. So for ordinary attire, according to Singh, the Sikh wear white clothing to cover the body during service and prayer to represent purity. And the men also wear turbans because they do not cut their hair, but they want to make sure it's out of the way while they're doing service, so like it doesn't cover their face. And they want to just look more respectful in the Gorda. And the women have to wear head coverings in the Gorda out of respect, but also because it's not good for Sikh people to really show their hair in the Gorda. And for special occasion attire, according to Holly, both men and women wear shalwar kameez or salwar kameez, which is a type of outfit that combines pants and a long shirt. But there are so many beautiful designs and colors that people can wear, and that is worn for a lot of different special occasions. So the Sikh culture and religion have a few unique beliefs and superstitions. So according to Singh, the Sikh believe that everything is from God. So therefore, when the Sikh cut their hair, they're usually not supposed to because it's a bad taboo. But it also means that someone or something has died. And then Singh also talked about how the Sikhs are vegans because everything is given one life. So it would be cruel to take it away just for like human consumption. So like they don't really eat animals because the animals have one life and they need to be respectful of that and they are respectful back. And smoking, drinking, and other several vices like gambling as well are prohibited among all people of culture, regardless of gender, because they are things that distract people from God and make them evil. So if a Sikh person wanted to partake in these vices, then they wouldn't really be allowed to step foot in the Gorda anymore. Even if they're still technically Sikh, people are open, but they're not very accepting towards you doing those vices. And according to Jagbir Juhal in her article, Sikhism and Mental Health, Negotiating Competing Cultures, the Sikh believe that the human body is a vessel for the Atma, which means soul in Punjabi, and it is imperative for the Atma to lose individuality and merge back with God via life, death, and reincarnation. The vessel needs to experience human life, both the good and bad parts of it, in order for the Atma to back to God. So it's more really about individualism. It's more about collectivism and doing good deeds as you live your life and reincarnate. So there are some stereotypes that are against the Sikh people, but mostly just Indian people in general. But for Sikhism, they think it's a very strict religion that is discriminatory against non-Sikh religions because there are different gods or God, and they engage in different rituals and like ceremonies that are not very compatible with Sikh culture. But in reality, Sikhism is a religion that's very open and welcoming and even gives food to anyone of any race or religion because it is something that God wants them to do. God cares more about you being a good person versus what kind of person you tend to serve, if that makes sense. And then there's also the stereotype that all like, the people who are like Indian are like dirty or stuff like that. But no, they're very kind, clean, and then they also tend to emphasize a lot of emphasis on personal hygiene. We're also making sure that everyone in the community feels like safe and at ease and like, clean. And in terms of mental illness, according to Juhud Johal, mental illness comes from Haumai, which means ego or like selfishness, but more ego, and it corrupts the mind. Halmai is the foundation for the five evils, which are found in the Sikh scriptures. So there's things such as kam, which is lust or desire, krodh, which is anger, lobh, which is greed, mot, which means attachment to like physical objects, but also like people, and akadhar, which is leads the individual to maya, which is a state of self-delusion and worldly attachment. So this can cause a lot of mental health issues such as depression, anxiety, and social issues for the Sikh culture. So when therapists or counselors are working with the Sheik, according to Singh, it is important for mental health specialists to be open-minded and to understand that the Sheik people never want to be forced to do something that goes against their beliefs, which is applicable to people of any background, but they emphasize that they are more concerned with attachment to God versus their attachment to other people. And according to Kushbeen Kaur Sohi, Purnima Singh and Krutika Bopani in their article, Ritual Participation, Sense of Community and Social Well-being, a study of seva, which is like the helping other people, as I mentioned earlier, in the Sikh community. It is good for mental health specialists to encourage their Sikh clients to participate in Sikh community-based religious activities and utilize prayers and public rituals, such as seva, to give meaning in their lives. Because they feel like when there's an imbalance or no sense of purpose, more people struggle with their mental health, but also struggle with God, which causes a lot of different mental health issues and physical issues. And according to Jahid Johal, Sheikhs believe that mental health problems come from spiritual imbalances, as I said earlier. So mental health specialists working with the Sheikh community need to be mindful about gurus and the guru's statement on how to alleviate their mental health struggles. Because again, it's about that connection with God versus connection with like the worldly things. So it would be beneficial for mental health specialists to be knowledgeable about Sikhism's history and teachings. And there are three important notes to know about the Sikh culture because though there are many things to be aware of because it's not really a Western Christian religion or community or culture, according to Xing, there's Sikh people are very loyal to family and spouses. So there's a stereotype going around that like not just Sikh but Indian people like tend to cheat or like are like derogatory or degenerate, which is absolutely not true. So they want to make sure the Sikh wants to make sure that people know that the stereotype that like religious people like to cheat on their spouse or do things that are impure just for the sake of doing it is completely false. And according to Holly, people should be more aware that Sikhism is constantly being erased from media and other things, not just in America, Canada, the UK, India, like all around the globe. Because Islam and Hinduism are the more dominant religions in education and media, so it would be beneficial to know the difference between the three religions. So Hinduism, Sikhism, and Islam, but also just religions in general. That not just solely Eastern, but also Western. And according to Nesbitt, the word Sikhism is not the best word to describe the religion of the Sikhs because even though it's a widely accepted term by the Sikh culture and people, so like when you talk to like, oh yeah, we practice Sikhism or like we are Sikhs, we need to be more mindful because the word Sikhism was from the European colonizers, and the use of ism gives the wrong idea that Sikhism is just a religion rather than a way of life and long tradition. It was really interesting to learn a lot about Sikh culture, and even though I felt a little outside of my comfort zone, it's definitely a culture I am very interested in and one that I find very respectful of other cultures and super open. And I really hope you enjoy my presentation. Thank you so much for listening. Mm.